It's recently come to my attention that a lot of the guys that I work with in the military do not utilize the TSP, and that is extremely devastating because the TSP is the easiest way to become a millionaire if you have access to it. There's two routes you can really take with it. One is know the difference between the 5 different funds and the Lifecycle Fund, and then the other route is don't ever educate yourself on it and lose a lot of money. And whenever I first joined the military, I was over here. I was losing a ton of money after the first year, and I had to make some changes. So now 4 years later, I have over $18,000 in the TSP, and I finally kind of cracked the code on it because I've done a ton of research on it to make this video for you, and then also just all of the mistakes I've made over the past year. But the first thing is I want to tell you how I lost all of that money whenever I first joined, while also explaining what the L Fund is. So to tell you the story about how I lost all my money the first year in the military, I have to explain the Lifecycle Fund to you. So this right here is the Lifecycle Fund, and we're going to use L 2025 during this example of explaining it to you. So what L 2025 essentially means is that if you join the military in 2005, this is the Lifecycle Fund that you would be in right here. And so the reason there's different years for it is because all of the Lifecycle Funds are more aggressive than others. So right now, if you join the military in 2024, you would probably be in L 2045. And if you were in that Lifecycle Fund, then it would probably be very aggressive because it has 20 years to grow. If it makes a mistake right now, then it has time to recover, so it's okay. Versus whenever you're at the end of your career, it's going to not be as aggressive because it doesn't want to lose all of your money. Because if it loses all your money, then that's going to kind of affect your retirement. So that's essentially what the Lifecycle Fund does for you. You can kind of just put your money in there, and then they manage it for you, and they switch it through the funds depending on where you are in your career. Some people really like it. I don't. And so the L 2025 has had a 4.78% return year to date on it. So just to kind of give you a little bit of something to compare it to, I'm pretty sure that the S&P 500, the C fund, is at a 10% year to date return right now. So you know, Lifecycle Fund's doing okay, whatever. It's at the end of its life, so it's trying to not be that as aggressive. And so then you have a lifetime average of 7.42%. And then the expense ratio is 0.051%. So the expense ratio is essentially how much money you actually pay to have your money inside of this fund, because every fund that you use with the TSP, you actually have to pay them a certain amount of money for using their website and stuff. But the amount of money that you pay them is extremely low, and honestly, if I was you, I wouldn't really pay too much attention to the expense ratios. I'll tell you why later. And so this is how L 2025 is made up right now. These are the 5 different funds. So right now it's 62% in the G fund, 11% in the I fund, 4% in the S fund, 16% in the C fund, and then 5.79% in the F fund. And then those percents are also constantly changing based on what they think that they need to set it to so that you don't lose all of your money. And so that's how the Lifecycle Fund works. So whenever I initially got in there, they just had a really bad year, and I logged into my account and everything was red. I had lost a ton of money, and ever since then, I don't really trust them in the Lifecycle Fund anymore. I trust myself in putting my money into my own individual funds of these 5 funds right here. And honestly, I think that's how all of you should think too, because in my opinion, the Lifecycle Fund sucks. That's not financial advice. That's just Bryson Saunders' opinion. So now let's talk about the G Fund, aka the Government Securities Investment Fund. This fund is really good for if you just want to set your money down and let it keep up with inflation, but not grow it all. So honestly, I really don't see a whole lot of use in this besides like you're at 67 years old and you've made your money and now you just want to sit there. But for most of you watching this fund is completely useless, but I'll still explain it. So its year to date is 2.21%, and its lifetime since 1987 has been 4.65% per year. So I'm pretty sure by that math that would beat out the average inflation rate. And then it is a very low risk stock. So once again, this really should only apply to you if you're like drawing the retirement actively and you're like 67 years old. So now we're looking at the F fund. It is the Fixed Income Index Investment Fund. So the only time that I would ever really even look at this fund is if interest rates are dropping, because you can see the year to date right here is 0.63%. At this time of recording, interest rates are not looking good. They were supposed to have been cut this year, and they actually have not cut interest rates at all this year because of the inflation. And so you can see this fund is getting absolutely annihilated. But as you can see, the lifetime return is 5.27%. from 1988, which is actually pretty decent. So you might be able to jump out of your fund and into this fund, like I said, if you see the interest rates are dropping. And honestly, it's pretty straightforward. It's a low medium fund, meaning, you know, that's how much risk that you're looking forward to. So now we have the S fund, which is the small cap stock index investment fund. And this is honestly my second favorite fund right here. So this is kind of just tracking the overall stock market, or the Dow Jones US Industrial Average, which in other words means that it's tracking the average growth of the actual US stock market. So there's a few more, there's a little bit more to it, but that's all that you really need to understand right there. So as long as the US is doing good, the S fund's probably also going to be doing good. And the year-to-date growth on this is 3.28%, and its lifetime average since 2001 is 8.96%. So this is honestly one of the two funds that I would think about putting my money into to diversify, just in case the stock market takes a gigantic tank. So next up, we have the I fund, which does confuse me a little bit more. So I'm going to read this right off the TSP's website. The I fund return moves up and down with the returns in the MSCI EAFE market risk. The EAFE index and the I fund returns will rise and fall as the value of the US dollar decreases or increases relative to the value of the currencies of the countries represented in the EAFE index, currency risk, or if I fund investments do not outpace or grow enough to offset reduction in purchasing power. So essentially, it's also just the International Stock Index Investment Fund to the European stock market, I'm pretty sure. So I don't know if that makes it sound a little bit simpler, but it's the European stock market. So its year to date is 5.85%, and then its lifetime is 5.19%. So essentially, if you just want to go and put some of your money outside of the US, then the I fund is the best fund to do that in. But, you know, I bleed red, white, and blue, so I don't personally go into the I fund, but it's not a bad way to diversify in all seriousness. If you do want to, like I said, it is kind of confusing if you read the definition of it, but as long as you just know it's pretty much just the European stock market, it's a little bit easier to think of at that point. And yeah, it's best utilized to diversify your stuff. I wouldn't go all in on it unless you just love the European stock market and you believe in it more than the American stock market. Okay, and then last but not least, we have the C fund, and this is my favorite fund right here. I know the most about it, and honestly, between you and I, not investment advice, just advice from Bryson Saunders, it is hands down the best fund to invest in to the TSP. I am 100% into the C fund. I have not diversified at all because I believe in it. And you may be wondering, Bryson, what is the C fund? The C fund is a fund that represents the S&P 500. So that is the top 500 companies in the United States of America. And so I heard this quote a long time ago from Warren Buffett. He actually placed this very famous bet on it. I think it was like $1 million bet. And he essentially bet all of these mutual fund managers. So all these guys that trade people's, you know, money with stocks and stuff like that. He bet all of them that the S&P 500 would outpace and beat every single one of all of the mutual fund managers. And he offered out the bet. One of the mutual fund managers took it, and Warren Buffett was 100% right. Most actively managed funds never beat out the S&P 500. The best thing to do is just to put something that tracks the S&P 500. Your money will grow the most effectively, and that's what the C fund does. So let's look at it right here. Its year to date, it's 15.28%, blowing everything out of the water, and then its lifetime is 11.08%. Once again, blowing everything out of the water. So once again, hands down, this is the best fund to put all your money in. I put about 15% right now into the C fund, and then I also get a 5% match along with the TSP matching 1%. So yeah, pretty much if you watch this video all the way through and you're wondering your game plan, that is what I personally do. I'm not going to tell you what to do because that would be investment advice, but I will tell you what I do. Like I said, I do 15% into the C fund, and then I get the 5% match from the military along with a 1% match from the TSP, which I'm pretty sure we all pretty much get that 1% match. And that's why I told you earlier, don't worry about what they charge you to actually run the fund, because they're actually like giving you money just for using the TSP. You're essentially getting a 6% return. I know the military says 5%, but it's actually around 6%. So if you watch this far in the video, thank you so much. make sure to get off and actually apply everything you learned in this video. And the reason I told you about all the other funds was so that if you do want to diversify, now you do know about the other funds, so you can do that. Like I said, just because I don't doesn't mean you shouldn't. So thank you so much. Make sure to subscribe because a ton of good videos will be coming out in the future.